So yet again, I have another one of these newer lawnmowers with one of these newer Briggs & Stratton engines on it. It's got the typical non-starting issue. It's likely that this is the problem inside of the carburetor. It's like a 98% chance. But just to be sure, because I've had these issues before, I did pull the spark plug out and looked at that. I've had some of these come in and the top of the spark plug here is touching the electrode, which is not a good thing because it basically grounds itself out and you're not going to get any spark out of it. But this one's okay, so I'm just going to throw it back in for now. But like I said, the issue has to do with the carburetor. So we're going to have to take this thing apart, pinch off the fuel line so we don't get fuel everywhere. We're going to take these two bolts out. Just going to take this off, these two. Everything looks nice and clean under there. And of course, we've got the standard plastic starter cup. One of the many Achilles heels of these particular engines. Now I have to pull the fuel line off. There is a little bit of fuel in it. It's going to drip out some probably. I'm not too worried about that. Now we have to get both of these linkages off. And there we go. So now the very next step is to take the carburetor apart. And in order to do that, you just take these two bolts off. And then I like to get a small flat tip screwdriver. That's all there is to that. And there's definitely some debris in here, which I'll show you guys here. But all that particulate that's in there came out of this carburetor. So I'm going to clean all that out, get rid of this. But our issue is very likely this jet right here. So I'm just going to gently pull that out. Just like that. And you guys can kind of see it's definitely a little dirty. It's pretty standard. It's likely that, I think I can even see it, it's this small hole right here that's gummed up. But these can actually be split apart. You guys can see some of the dirt that's made its way in there. But typically, if you want to clean these out, this is where you do it, right here and right up here. I've got a separate video on this. You can also clean out these little holes if they're gummed up, which it actually appears that this one has been. But we're going to be replacing this jet anyways. We inspect the rest of the carb. I doubt there's going to be any other issues with it. Pull the pin and the float and the needle. Float looks good. So does the needle. Everything in here looks good as well. Linkages are working good as they should be, especially this automatic choke. $592,792 is the part number. This is our new one. You want to make sure that you get this reinstalled the correct way. This middle piece right here, if you look in the throat, actually has an insert in there that's lined up with it. It's got a hole in it as well. You can see that kind of off-white looking piece right there. So there's two separate holes in there essentially that you're going to have to get this through. And it's not going to go back in unless those two are lined up. But you can see it's flush. It's exactly how it should be. And then if you look inside, you can see the tip of the emulsion tube right there. Alright, now we can just put everything back together. Okay. This is only going to go back on one way. So if you're confused, it's either going to work or it's not. So it won't go back on like that, but it'll go back on like this. Being that this is an impact, I go back on it nice and slowly, and it's got a variable speed trigger. So I don't torque these down any more than they should be, but carburetor's finished. Let's go ahead and stick it back on the machine. All right, so we're going to stick it back on. I did reinstall this retainer and the little O-ring. So this one's going to go back on first. You want to be really careful because this is plastic. Choke vein. And just kind of gently push it back on. That looks good to me. So now I just got to reinstall the fuel line. There we go. Just to reinstall this. Make sure that the PCV line hose goes back on. Before I do that, I am going to make sure that all the linkages work correctly. They don't need to be torqued down all that tight. Make sure everything's still good, and it is. I'm going to throw the air filter, which is in really good condition, cover back on. And then we're going to throw these back in with the recoil. Alright, so I just reconnected the spark plug boot and the spark plug, of course. I'm going to check the oil right now. Oil's right where it should be. So we'll give it a start and see what happens. Well, that was an easy fix. Everything works accordingly. So I'm just going to give it a bath and send it back on its way. For the record, this thing is only 2 years old. Pretty ridiculous, Briggs & Stratton.